how to tie a folding anchor, or how to tie your rope onto a folding anchor. Now, I am not a master seaman or anything like that. I went to a car boot sale the other day, or for the Americans who are with us, it's a yard sale, and I found myself this folding anchor. I mean, basically the whole idea is it unfolds like so, and then you put your, I suppose it's a collet or something like that, down onto it and lock it into place, and there you go, you have an anchor. But as I was looking at it, I mean, okay, let's tell you why I purchased it for starters. It came with a whole load of rope on the end of it. This is not the rope on it. It came out with some other rope on it, which is now currently outside being stretched and straightened for future use. But it came like this, with a rope on the end of it. And so I started doing a little bit of research on the actual anchor itself, and it came like this. And one of the things that I wondered was, why is there a connection at that end? And then as I did my research, because eventually I'm going to sell the anchor, I've got no use for it, I just wanted the rope from it, but I found out that the way I'd purchased my anchor like this was actually tied wrong. It shouldn't be tied like this at all. Right, so I've got my anchor tied up in the way that I purchased it, and if I were to throw this into the water like so, and if it came across an object, an immovable object, and got fouled on it, no matter how much I pull it or which way I turn it, it's not coming undone. It's not coming free from the object under the water. And so eventually, after lots of huffing, puffing and pulling, I would eventually have to cut my line and abandon my anchor. But the proper way of attaching your cord to your anchor can prevent this from happening, because you have like a safety release system on your cord. And so what I'll do now is I'll show you exactly how to tie this anchor so that you don't end up with it caught underwater, having to cut the rope and then losing it. And I think, judging by the rust on this anchor, I think this one was underwater for quite some time and somebody salvaged it. So let me now show you how this anchor should be tied so that you can actually get it back should it become fouled on something. So just let me sort it out and I'm back in a second. So for demonstration purposes, we're going to need our imagination a little bit as well, but you'll know exactly what I mean as I do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off from this end here. So I'm going to undo the shackle at this end, and it's quite a manky, horrible shackle. Undo it from this end and take my cord to the other end of the anchor. Now what I do is I then attach my shackle to this end of the anchor. So let's just go ahead and do that and attach it there like so. Okay, that'll do. If you're using it for real, you'd tighten it up tight, and you'd probably even mouse it off to make sure that it doesn't come undone at any time. Right, so the next thing that I do is I take my cord here, my anchor line, and I run it up the centre of my actual anchor itself. Then what I would do is, now I've got a number of choices here. I can either get myself a cable tie, or I think in America they call them zip ties, and pass a zip tie through the hole and wrap it around my anchor cable here so that the zip tie will break. We need the zip tie to break, so you don't want the biggest, heftiest zip tie that you can get hold of. You need to test it with the right zip tie. So when you've got the right zip tie, just test it on dry land to make it's got to break. That's the point, that when we pull on this really hard, it has to break the zip tie. Or if you have it, you could tie it off with a piece of fishing line. And the reason I say fishing line is that fishing line has a certain poundage rating, and after so many pounds, usually a fishing line breaks. So once again, you would need to test it with the right strength of fishing line. So that's tying a fishing line round there, but for demonstration purposes today, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to don't do this with your proper anchor, but I'm going to get some masking tape, and let's just put a neat piece on, get some masking tape, and let's imagine that this is now my anchor cable and we're actually preparing it. So I'm tying a piece of cord around here that I know the breaking strain of it, and I know for a fact that if this anchor gets fouled on something, I can break it at this point here using my cord as I pull upwards on it. So now that we've done that, our anchor is prepared for being thrown into the water. So what I'll do is let's set it up so that the anchor is nicely set up to be thrown into the water, and then lock it down like so, and then go whoosh and throw it into the water, and everything's happy. And so now when I pull up on this, my anchor comes up as normal. But here is the scenario now. Let's say, for example, we have thrown our anchor into the water and there is an underwater obstruction. And basically, I've pulled on my anchor like this and it's caught on an underwater obstruction. And no matter how much pulling I do, it's just not coming undone. But if we see here, at this point here, where we've got our cable tie, zip tie, or our cord where we know the breaking strain of it, we can, if we want to, or we need to rescue our anchor, is basically pull up until the cable tie or the cord snaps. And once it snaps, the anchor, let's just change the position slightly. So the anchor line here is now at this end. And so if I pull on this end here now, I can pull in another absolute opposite direction, and I have therefore freed my anchor from the underwater obstruction. And so therefore, so when you're rigging your anchor, you basically tie it off at the bottom as secure as you can, bring it round so that it passes, I don't know what they're called, parts of the anchor, the foldy bits, and then at this point here we tie it off with something we know that if you put X amount of strain on it, it will break. So when I say use a zip tie, cable tie, whatever you call them, make sure it's small enough so that when you pull on it, it will break loose. Or if you're using fishing line, and don't forget, if it's a £10 fishing line, once round is £10, but if you tie it twice, that could equate to £20 of pressure that you've got to pull on it to actually release it from that end of your anchor. And so there you have it. That is my folding anchor and how I believe a folding anchor should be tied. Okay, once again, thanks very much for watching, and if you enjoyed it, please share it, please like it, and if you want to see more, subscribe. Thanks very much then. Bye-bye.